Thank you. So Raghu, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about the work you do, and then go ahead with your discussion of the work you're doing in the poor communities in Sri Lanka.
Okay. Hi, good evening, good afternoon, good morning to all of you. I'm Raghu. I work for the National Christian Evangelical Alliance of Sri Lanka, and I lead the Relief and Development section of the Evangelical Alliance. I'll be very brief, and I'll share what our interventions has been so far with regard to COVID-19 responses. So these interventions derive from the challenges that we saw in the communities after this COVID-19 crisis started. So one of the key areas is that emergency relief, which we started doing with the poorest in the community. So far, we have touched about 700 families across the island, giving them essential dry rations and stuff like that. Our criteria has been female-headed households and daily wages, and of course, pastors of independent churches who are struggling to survive during this crisis time. Then also, we also work on digital citizenship toolkit. This is to do with to get young people engaged in a responsible behavior on social media and on the digital platforms, because there has been a lot of misinformation going around, and it kind of create hate speech among the community and so on. So because to give a couple of examples is that in the first few deaths in Sri Lanka, so far we have had 7 deaths. Out of first 3 deaths, 2 were Muslim people. So there had been, kind of a talk created among the community. You all know the background to the Easter Sunday attack. Again, the Muslim community has been kind of cornered, and with this, 2 people out of 3 coming from the Muslim community again gave a rise to the kind of communal hatred among the community. So we, as an Evangelical Alliance, we are trying to mitigate this by educating young people what to share on social media, and to fact check whatever the information that they get, and reshare and repost and so on. Also, we have had an incident in the northern part of Sri Lanka where a pastor came from Switzerland and had a meeting, and then when he went back to Switzerland, he was found COVID-19 positive. And then this rumor went around in the country saying these Christians are the super spreaders of this COVID-19 virus. So I mean, the minority communities has been always targeted when small incidents or one-off incidents have taken place in some part of the country, and those who are trying to create communal tension take this forward. Again, another issue. Couple of days back, the Sri Lankan government issued a circular on dead bodies, and they insisted, saying that all dead bodies must be cremated, and there was no chance given to a burial. This also has been a great concern for Muslim communities in the country. There had been a constant appeal from the Muslim community to respect their religious rights to have their burials according to their religious beliefs. But the government has decided otherwise, and has issued a circular or a paper, to say that all dead bodies has to be cremated. So these are some of the challenges that we have, that we are facing, because this goes against the WHO guidelines on dead bodies, or how to, how that can be sorted out. Uh, there is another issue in the communities, that when people are identified or suspected to have contacted or COVID-19, has been quarantined. And when the government officials quarantine them, they put a sticker on their door, uh, a special sticker. So people, in the villages, in those areas, kind of, tend to corner these people, or, look at them differently. This stigma has been an issue, and we as a faith-based organization trying to work with interfaith leaders to address this, because in the past we have been working with the interfaith community, interfaith leaders. I'll just trying to share my screen. Um, so we have been working with interfaith communities to take off the stigma around the leprosy, and we work with the Ministry of Health in all 25 districts in Sri Lanka, using the interfaith network, interfaith communities, to meet to overcome these challenges. So we are trying to use the same tool, same mechanism to address this COVID-19 stigma, and also to bring more awareness among the communities. Already, some of our interfaith leaders have been in the forefront to bring awareness on this issue, and they have been distributing leaflets and information guidelines to the communities wherever the lockdown has been eased and released for a few hours. Our interfaith leaders has been distributing some of these very very basic and very valid information among the community. Another issue that we see in the long run, maybe post COVID-19, is that economic issue as around the globe. Even in Sri Lanka, among the daily wage earners and then small entrepreneurs are facing a severe problem. Um, even now, the people who are in the agriculture sector was unable to sell their products, sell their crops for the right price. They have been given a very little price, but in the markets the middleman get the maximum benefit, and the end buyer pays the higher price for the product, but whereas the producer just get peanuts for their production. So these are some of the challenges that we are facing in the long run, and we see there is a shortage of cash in people's hand, even though goods comes to their doorstep due to non-availability of their jobs, and restrictions imposed in certain districts. People are unable to have access to liquid cash. So this is also a growing concern, even though there is food and there is supplies, but people do not have the buying power, enough money to purchase those. So these are some of the concerns, and some of the work that we have been doing in line with these specified concerns. And we have been working with the young people of the church to educate them, and to be more vibrant on the online platforms, to bring more awareness and to bring more hope at this situation. Yeah, that's all from my end. I have one more document to share. I hope I can quickly find that. Yeah, this is something that we worked with the WHO. Hope everybody is able to see my screen. Response guidelines for religious leaders. Is my screen clear?
Yes, it is. We can see it.
Yeah. So we worked with the Public Health Bureau and WHO here in Sri Lanka, and also with the Leprosy Mission England and Wales to produce these guidelines for faith leaders. I think I can share this with the group later on, based on 4 key areas. Be safe, maintain distance, wash your hands, cover your mouth. These are basic guidelines. And stay at home. And if there's any emergency, they can call. There is a number. And then, be a role model as faith leaders in the community. And then be caring, look after communities, counsel against violence, because violence against children and women has been increased rapidly in Sri Lanka as well during this quarantine period. So that's another growing concern in Sri Lanka, how to mitigate, how to address domestic violence and violence against children. Then protect and attend children, as I mentioned, and then shared responsibilities, show kindness. I'm just rushing it through, but I'll share the document with the group. And be mindful during your relief efforts, during your counseling support, how religious leaders or faith leaders, take some of these key guidelines into consideration when they are involved in providing counseling and relief support.
Excuse me, Raghu. I still see the slide engaging faith leaders. I don't know if that's the same as other people are seeing. I haven't seen the next document come up yet.
Oh, is that so?
You might have to unshare your screen, Raghu, and then reshare the document.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. Yeah, I think that's right. You have to unshare that one and share the next one.
Okay. Oh, I'll do that. Okay. Cool. Is it moving now?
It's changing.
It's changing. Am I moving now? It's be safe.
Yeah, it's just a gray screen. That's what I see.
We only see your desktop.
Oh, sorry. I think I'm countering. Is it okay now? If not, I'll just email the document to the group.
Yeah, maybe go ahead and email that and just describe it to us. It'll be fine.
Yeah. Yes. I don't know. I'm encountering some issues with my network here. Yeah.
Yeah, and I may have it. I'll take a look.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, go ahead. I'll find your document.
Yep. So that's been our work and intervention so far. But I'm glad if there's any clarification needed, or any comments or any inputs to what I've shared just now.
let me share my screen real quick here. And I think this is, just the document you're referring to, Raghu.
That's right. Yeah. Thank you, David. Yeah.
And so tell us a little bit more about this. So you're distributing this in communities?
Yes, we'll be distributing this plus the document which the UNICEF has worked on COVID-19 parenting guidelines. So we'll be distributing these two documents along with all our relief packs that we are giving to the community. And this specific one, we will distribute it through our interfaith network in all 25 districts.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's open this up for discussion. And if I may lead off, Raghu, I was interested in what you were saying about the 25 districts. And the reason I'm interested in that is one of the things that we're really encouraging is that people work across communities, even across the country. So for the Alliance, for example, to think in terms of how it's connected to various communities and to make that not only geographically dispersed, but also across faith groups. So when you described 25 districts, I wasn't clear if those were districts that you have organized or if those are the districts of Sri Lanka, and you just have a 4-person team in each of those. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Yes, so these 25 districts are the districts of Sri Lanka, the 25 administrative districts of Sri Lanka. So we have our interfaith network present in all 25 districts. So how it works is in every, we have formed a steering committee which comprises of 25 people, one from each district. All these 25 are pastors. So they are the center point of these interfaith networks in their respective districts. So in each district we have interfaith network which kind of carry out most of our awareness campaigns and work in those districts.
So the teams in each district, those are interfaith teams?
That's right. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. And can you say a little bit about that? How does that work for you, creating an interfaith team? What are some of the challenges there?
One of the challenges is to get them operational in all 25 districts itself, because they were not really inactive in all 25 districts initially. But when we started this campaign with the Ministry of Health on an anti-leprosy campaign, we requested them that their presence in all 25 districts is a must for us to take this national campaign on ground. So based on that, initially there was a bit of a hiccup in starting these groups in all districts, but eventually we were able to manage to get them start that and get going. It has been very effective in carrying out this awareness campaign with regard to leprosy over the past 3 years. And there was a recognition by the government, not only for the interfaith group, but also to our pastors, saying the government actually issued a letter saying these pastors are authorized to work in leprosy awareness campaign in every district. And we were directly connected with the public health inspector of every district. So when this COVID-19 took place, the Alliance had direct contact with the public health inspectors because of our previous, work engagement with them.
Interesting. So this was a structure that existed several years ago with your work on leprosy, and in a sense, you've been able to refocus it to also address COVID-19.
Exactly.
Yeah. If I may, and excuse me, group, but I want to follow up on another point here with Raghu. The other thing that we are encouraging is that there is a local community relationship with, or even partnership with, the health authorities. And it sounds like that's also part of your work coming out of the leprosy work. Can you say a little bit about how a faith-based team works with the health authorities? What is that like, and what are some of the challenges there?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question. When we started this campaign, the Ministry of Health actually was very suspicious about us, because we are a faith-based organization, and pastors and Christians had a different connotation in Sri Lanka. They always thought, these people are converting people. So there are a lot of misunderstanding about faith-based organizations and Christians in the country. As a result of it, when we formed the steering committee, the health ministry said the director of the anti-leprosy campaign came to train the 25 pastors, because they were so suspicious about our motives. But then, we started off, they were happy with the work. But one thing they said, you can do everything, but you can't go door-to-door campaign. Door-to-door campaign was prohibited for us. But, about a year later, the government approached us and said, here, we need to take this awareness campaign to door-to-door. Can you all help with your pastors to take this door-to-door? So this public health inspector goes along with the pastor to door-to-door campaign and introduces the pastor, saying, he is the pastor of this village, and here we have come to do an assessment of leprosy. And the public health inspector gives the technical advices to the group, while the pastors standing there and taking notes of it. So that's how the relationship has grown. Now, of course, they don't see us as people converting, but they know that we are doing something tangible in the society, and our motives are very clear with regard to eradicating leprosy. So
very good. That sounds like quite a success for you.
Thank you.
So let me open it up to the rest of the group, and you can use the raise your hand feature, or since we are about 14 participants, if people want to just jump in, that would be okay also. So any questions or reactions for Raghu?
Yes, I want to ask, last night we had one of our key leaders leading the fight against COVID-19 on our television, informing us that this is going to take at least 2 months before it stops. One of the biggest challenges that we have is feeding the poor. I just wonder what Raghu is doing there with regards to food parcels or vouchers or something like that, because I've just got off a meeting now with our senior church leaders in South Africa, and that's one of our big challenges. Thank you.
Yes, it's been almost the same for us as well, because financial support has been a problem, from every angle. But we were managed to get some support. And as I mentioned earlier, our focus group has been, the female-headed households, the daily wages, and the pastors of independent churches. This has been our, main criteria to select beneficiaries for the dry rations packs. We are also trying to do something, kind of a long-term thing, seeds and seedling project, which where we provide seeds and seedling to these families, so that they can, they will have their own kind of a home gardening system. And this grow bag concept, where if they don't have space in their garden, but if they don't have a garden or space, then they can use this grow bag project. So we are trying to do with about 5,000 families as a pilot on a long run. As since we see this is going to take a bit of a longer time to come to a recovery stage, and we can't be providing rations for for months and months, due to the financial situation, globally is not that promising.
Yeah, Johannes?
I just got off the phone discussing similar issues with Pakistani PPI group, Pakistan Partnership International Initiative, sorry, and they have also decided to feed about 6,000 poor families, and instead of appealing to the Western world, which they of course did, but there's no money coming, they have started to activate their communities, not only the Christian communities, but communities as such. And during the last week, they were able to raise support for about 70% of the 6,000 families they have picked. So it's very encouraging, I think. And again, it's an Islamic country. Most of the neighbors are not Christians, but they still do this. Then this morning, I had a conversation with people in Central Asia debating similar issues. And they also said going into the community and inviting the community to solve their own problems. Instead of relying on some Uncle Sam coming from the US or Germany, has been very helpful for them. I'm not saying there's no Western help needed, but what they need, Christians need, we need to help them to lose their fear, to work together with Muslims, with people from different faiths or orientations. So faith-based communities seem to be ideal, but of course evangelicals, they've had a bad record in cooperating with others. Of course, Pakistan or Sri Lanka are exemptions, maybe.
Yeah, and if I may tag onto that, I think that's a really important point, because a lot of the Western world is really focused on itself and at the price of really providing aid in the global South. So I think you're exactly right that people first need to look to their local governments for support, and then to those local communities. So Raghu, that brings me back to you in terms of the resources you're distributing. Are you distributing on behalf of the government? Is the government providing that? Or do you also do some things such as Johannes described, at helping communities to look to their local resources and share those?
We do both. We do get the local community support as well in some way, because our focus is to, it's relief, transitional recovery, and sustainable development. These are the three phases that we are trying to address this. So, like, while we provide relief, we also, think long term about this seeds and seedling project, which we work with the agriculture department in every district with the government. So even our relief efforts has been very well coordinated with the government entities, and we work with and through them to identify the beneficiaries and support them. because we don't only work for the Christians as the alliance, though pastors and Christians do fall in as in the beneficiary list, but our work has been kind of spread out to the entire community. So we work both with the government, and we also encourage the local community to come together and stand by each other and support each other. And that's why these work with the interfaith community, interfaith network becomes very important for us to bring the communities together to address this pandemic and this crisis situation.
So just to make sure that I followed that, so you're saying that there are three phases. One is working in partnership with the government. The second is mobilizing local resources. And then the third is kind of supporting home agriculture, distributing seedlings, that type of thing?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. Could you say a little bit more about mobilizing local resources? Maybe tell us a little bit, how exactly do you do that?
See, we have invited the city churches to help to support their neighbors, to support their churches and community where they are situated in. And this is where comes the community development discipleship evangelism concept, which we use to get the churches to be with the community at this time and work for the community. And we have some good stories coming from rural parts of Sri Lanka, where the alliances pastors were able to go out and help the communities, providing them with essential supplies and food and things like that with their own money. There was a pastor in a northwestern province. The alliance supported him a few years back to have his own bottled water project, and he was doing very well. He was good. He was successful in his business, and we received a lot of information and pictures from him where out of his profit he was able to contribute to the community at this time, providing them relief. So many pastors are doing this in their respective areas. So as an alliance, as the Evangelical Alliance, we have called them to support, look after their neighbors. As I showed in the guidelines also, care for your neighbors has been one of the key message that we wanted to give to not only to our pastors, but also to other faith leaders as well.
Raghu, later I'll follow up with you. I think it'd be great to capture some of those stories and share those. I think those would be inspiring. So I'm not wanting to dominate our conversation here. Please let me go back to the group. Any other thoughts, responses to Raghu?
David, this is Christine. Thank you, Raghu, so much. And we hear very often about the good work that you're doing in religious liberty in Sri Lanka. There's always reports. It's very concise. Is there any sense that the persecution that Christians undergo in Sri Lanka is taking a different turn with the need for collaboration and cooperation?
It does. As I mentioned earlier, Christians were seen as the super spreader of this virus due to one or two isolated incidents that took place in to different areas, and where pastors were involved. And there had been a lot of hatred against Christians going on online, especially on the social media. I mean, it's very nasty, social media engagement. And yes, in in one place, a place called Hatton, the church and the people who attended that meeting was, I mean, quarantined for longer than the normal period. And some of the people, some of those Christians were not even have gone to that meeting or attended to that meeting. But the racist campaign, the religious racism has, as I mentioned, against Christians and Muslims, as has been growing during this time. And we are seeing a lot against Muslim communities as well at this time.
Other questions? And Raghu, it's interesting to me, this is not a question, but just an observation, that independently of you, the coalition operating in Congo did something very similar, where they found it necessary to create community teams that are made up of local leaders and faith leaders. And so the coalition, which is national, works through those local teams and helps them to understand what are those local issues and concerns. So I think it's very similar to what you're describing, how you work with your teams.
Yes.
David J had a question.
David, sorry, Raghu, what's your impression of something that Johannes referred to in terms of the limitations of outside income, outside support, with the border closures and the financial markets crashing? There's a very depressed view of where outside resources could come. I'm very encouraged by your internal strategies, and this may also overlap into Andre's speciality, but do you think that will be sufficient? We've had a good long period of this first world, developing world binary. It seems like that's being smashed now. We're looking at being in a position of, in the Western world anyway, looking on and somewhat helpless in some ways, particularly from a missions perspective, where a lot of money went one way, a lot of resource went one way, and there is discussion about how we can create digital resources to help or do something like this, but it almost feels like trying to prop up a system that no longer is necessarily relevant. Is there a perception forming in the Christian community in Sri Lanka about these things?
See, this I don't see. I don't think we have sufficient, resources available to resurrect what has gone wrong, because we are paying 97% of our GDP as loan repayment as Sri Lanka. So that's a very serious condition that we are in, and more loans have kind of ruining the country. But we do need to come out of this dependency mentality as a church, as organizations, if we are to move forward. And that's something that we have been telling the church during this time, and also before this time, that the church needs to look into ways and means, creative ways and means to sustain themselves, and also in return that they can serve the communities. So it's been a challenge, we have been advocating for creative ways of finding the resources, because no longer COVID-19 has showed us that the more you be the dependent, the more you are going to suffer, because once your partner gets hit, and the chances for you to get up is very less. So I think um, we need to come up with new strategies, new ways of doing things. Even some of our ministries that we have been running traditional way for years, now it's time to rethink and re-strategize how we move forward.
I may have a question. Just about half a year ago, Roshan Mendes came over to Canada, and we had a training at our diaspora training hub, and Roshan mentioned the challenge of the diaspora, families supporting families, where the dependency model is still then valid. So that, for instance, he told the story of the young people on the street driving big motorcycles because their aunt is paying from Canada. And so those guys would not pick up any local work because money, like really much, came in for them, so they were supported. Have you developed any other approach yet? Do you see the diaspora reacting? Do you see any chances to approach the diaspora in positive ways, to really make it a community impact and not just one family that stays in the dependency model?
See, yes, that's not only the family supporting family model has created, the issue of dependency, but also it has brought in a lot of social issues as well. There has been a lot of drug abuse, especially among the Tamil communities, in the northern eastern part of Sri Lanka. So it's not only issue of dependency, but I think Johannes knows this well. There is also the problem, the long-standing ethnic issue, has not been resolved, and therefore always Tamil diaspora wants to send money to the Tamil community, and and Sinhala diaspora wants to only send it to the Sinhala community. So this bridge has not been built yet, but I agree there has to be. There are few initiatives which has taken, but I wouldn't say as much enough has been done to bring this about. But it's still a huge issue. Even now, Tamil diaspora community wants to support something that happens only in Tamil areas, not in other parts of the country. So this has been an issue for us, Manuel.
Well, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Andre, thank you for your patience. We'll have to talk with you next week. Raghu, by way of wrapping up, could you just consider one more question? What is the biggest challenge you face, or the most difficult problem you faced? That if this group were able to bring together its resources and help you solve a problem, what would you want them to help you with?
I think anything to do with sustainable, livelihood, because I think we need to come out of this relief mentality very soon, and we need to look for sustainable, livelihood and income venue for these poor families, because they are going to suffer for some time. Because I mean, I've been on the field last few days, with distributing relief things and all that, and I see to my eyes how much of struggle and pain these people go through, especially the female-headed households and the daily wages are going through tremendous, difficulty. So anything to help them on a long-term, sustainable, livelihood support is the one thing that I would promote, at any place.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such an important point, because the problem is not going to be over when the virus is contained. There was, in fact, a statement yesterday out of the UN that potentially 50% of the world's population could drop below the poverty level as a result of this. That's just staggering, a number to think about. So, well, thank you, Raghu. May I offer a word of prayer for you and your work?
Thank you. Yes, of course.
Well, Lord, we thank you so much for your servant Raghu and the good work that he is doing in Sri Lanka. And thank you that it's possible for us to interact with him and to learn from him. And Lord, if there are any ways that we can support him, please you'll guide our thoughts about that, and continue to strengthen and bless him in the work that he does, and care for those whom he is reaching out to in the poor communities in Sri Lanka. So Lord, we thank you for this time. We thank you for the opportunity to serve, and we have the opportunity to come together and work together in his name. Amen.
Amen.
David, can I ask one last question?
Yep, go ahead, Jay.
Are we in the WEA lobbying, or do we have an advocacy group for debt relief specifically that we're like to do? I like what Raghu said in terms of the debt burden on these poor countries. It seems to be that macro level is something that some others have been pushing for, and wondering if this is a time to start to release some of that. Are we in any way engaged in that?
Not specifically, but I wonder if that would fit in with the business working group that Timo is leading up, perhaps. But I think that's an important question we should follow up on. We have our task force conversation tomorrow. Maybe that'd be a good place to raise that. Yeah,
I wonder. It would be good to be seen to be doing something in that regard. I think it's something we can potentially do and leverage. So
yeah, good thought.
Thanks.